I worked for 30 years for General Motors, and I am a proud UAW member. I also do a radio show, and I have to say that because I'm on the radio, I never have to worry about quieting an audience. Anyway, I do a program every Monday in Atlanta on a station called WRFG, which is a non-commercial, progressive, I call it Liberation Radio, 50 years on air, and the program's called, guess what? The Labor Forum. And we talk about every issue impacting working people, and since October 7th, we have been talking about Palestine. So I threw away my script, so I'm not delivering any other kind of introduction, because I know we're short on time. But I did want to do this. We are starting this panel with tributes to several people who have, okay, thank you, several people who have passed. And as I said, I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I had met Sekou Odinga. Now, I want to just say, I'm going to start out by saying I met him after he had been released from prison. So there are people in this audience, I believe, who worked with, knew Sekou Odinga personally. So if there are such, please just raise your hands, because that means you were part of a struggle that was revolutionary. Thank you much, Bob. All right, wave. Now, in order to give a proper tribute, I called two friends in Atlanta who do and did know Sekou Odinga. And I asked them, if you were here, what would you want this audience to know about Sekou Odinga? So they told me lots of stories, so obviously I can't do all that. But I will say that they told me these two. They said that in 1969, when the FBI and everyone was searching for the Panthers that became the Panther 21, that the police were at the front door of Sekou Odinga's apartment. And as they bashed the door in, he escaped out a back window, went down a drain pipe, across a rooftop, and got away. And then the next thing people knew, he was in Havana. And then the next thing they knew, he was in Algiers, where he started the Black Panthers international section, and that he was involved with SWAPO and the PLO. And then after several years in exile, he decided that the struggle was still in the United States and came back. Then in October of '81, I believe I got the date right, he was arrested. But he was brutally, and I'm going to say this 3 times, brutally, brutally, brutally tortured and beat up by the New York police and other federal agencies. Went to jail, 43 years, I believe the total was. 50. I can't, obviously, I'm not a teacher, I can't even say. 30, thank you. And what they said about him, both when he was beaten in jail and then all the time he was in prison, that his concern always was for how are the rest of the comrades? How is my family doing? Not about how he had been treated. He always said that he was a political prisoner, that he was innocent of anything other than the right of the oppressed to rebel. And so I wanted to leave that, the message that we want to remember about Sekou Odinga was that as we talk here about the right of the Palestinians, the right of the Yemenis, the right of everybody who is under colonialism and oppression, that they have the right, it is their right. We could actually say their obligation, our obligation to resist. So, Sekou, Odinga, presente. Now, but I was asked to do two. The other person is someone I also never met. Well, I did meet Sekou, but I never met Manuel Terán, the forest defender in Atlanta, known as Tortuguita. And I hope that everybody is very aware of this struggle that has been on now for several years against this Cop City, huge militarized police training center, which the city of Atlanta, really it's the Atlanta Police Foundation, all of the corporations, want to build in a large forest that was was actually legislated to be a public green space. And Tortuguita came, he lived in Florida, of Venezuelan parentage, came to Atlanta to be one of the forest defenders. And everything I've ever heard about was about gentleman kindness, concern for nature, and absolute dedication to making sure that this police facility would not be built. He was killed. His one-year anniversary was this past Thursday. It's been 1 year, and the struggle against the police building of this facility continues. So, Tortuguita, presente. Omowale, you get to come up. So our next speaker is Omowale Clay, longtime leader of Brooklyn-based December 12th movement, and he will be doing a tribute to Viola Plummer. I'm so happy that this is also being done at this meeting. It's so important that we always recognize that the struggle has proceeded before us and that you all are proceeding with it now.
You know, I'm not of the generation where you read things on your phone. But let me start out by saying I'm very happy to be here on behalf of the December 12th movement. I'm very happy to be here because we just lost our chairperson, Viola Plummer, this past week. And I was talking to Larry Holmes, and I was saying, you know, Larry and I go back 74. I think 74, Clifford Glover, Jamaica. You know, Larry was a little kid, and I was younger. But I wanted to be here because we're in the process of planning funeral services for our comrade. But I wanted to come because we talked about this last year. It's the 100th centennial of Lenin. And Lenin clarified for us the relationship between socialism and the national liberation struggles. And we think that is critical. Also, I wanted to come because I wanted you to hear Viola in June 1991 in Libya at a worldwide anti-Zionist conference for Africans. And let me just do the telephone thing. She said at that conference, Kwame Ture was there, Rosie Douglas was there, Max Stanford was there. Many of the revolutionaries were at this conference. And this is what she said, 1991. Africa was colonized by the same barbarians who colonized Palestine. Colonialism, racism, and Zionism have the same strategies and tactics. Colonialism and Zionism are the economic systems which trick people using spiritualism, confusing spiritualism and economics. The destruction of our language was crucial, and we now communicate in a language developed by our colonists to oppress us. Language is an important tool and means of propaganda to reach the masses of our people, and the necessity to destroy the myth that we're attacking religion when we attack Zionism. We know that democracy is defined in terms of the frick and frack. If you don't choose frick, you have to do frack. It is strongly recommended that we study the question of black theology because of the importance of religion to African people. We do not want to isolate ourselves from the masses, and yet we do not want to tail behind them. As a result, we must be united. Our differences between us must be put aside, and it's necessary to unite on the basis of our similarities. That's Viola Plummer, 1991. And she goes on, but I just wanted to start with that because from the very beginning of my political relationship with Viola, she always was a teacher. And one of the first things she struggled to teach us were the contradictions that are in you are the first contradictions that you have to resolve. The class struggle going on within you is what determines what you're going to do. And so she was constantly struggling to have us analyze ourselves because being in this capitalist, degenerate country, there are all sorts of ideas that run through our heads, some that propel us forward, some that don't. You know, Winnie Mandela said, I'm a product of my people and I'm also a product of the enemy. Because one teaches me my responsibility, the other one teaches me what must be destroyed. And so I must learn from both of those because I'm a product of both of those. So it's not accidental. You know, the last time I was here, we were commemorating Matulu in this room. After that, President of Cuba, President Canal, was here in this room. But I used to tell Viola, I can't come to this room without understanding that also, under her leadership, this room wouldn't be here. Because in 1990, they were tearing down the Audubon Ballroom. And one of our comrades, Olive Armstrong, led the Black Consciousness Movement, which was a youth in the December 12th movement, to stop the destruction of this building. This building right here. So when Larry told me and Monica said, we're going to do Lenin 100th anniversary, we want to focus it on the question of the Palestinians and what's going on. And you know, we say, for people who don't think it can get worse, it can. All you have to do is look at the television. If you don't believe it could get worse, it can. The bombs that they're dropping on the Palestinian people are made right here in the United States. If they can do that there, they will certainly do that here. And it will not be in the kind of neoliberal form. You know, people talk about gentrification. We've never accepted that term. In fact, we didn't know what the damn term meant. It was some sociologist term from England. It's ethnic cleansing, which is this economic and international definition. And so it can get worse. We in the December 12th movement, and I read that statement by Viola because we want you to know the Black Liberation Movement is not tailing the Palestinian Liberation Movement. We're hand in hand and arm with the Palestinian struggle. We remember the relationship between Israel and racist South Africa in terms of the exchange of weapons, intelligence, all forms of communications between them to keep both of us oppressed. The reason why South Africa could now at this point in time take a position in the World Court denouncing Israel is because South Africa liberated itself. South Africa could not have liberated itself if it was not for the allies around the world, but in particular the countries of Southern Africa who supported armed struggle in Southern Africa. The treachery among the Arab countries that surround Palestine is historic. It is historic. They have sold out the Palestinian people for 10 pieces of silver. And that is why Palestine is in the situation it is now. Look around, as they say, look around, brothers and sisters, if you want to understand the conditions of Palestinians. Look around who they're surrounded by. They're not surrounded by Britain. They're not surrounded by the United States. They're not surrounded by Italy or France. They're surrounded by their Arab brothers and sisters who have sold them out. And that's a hard reality. So, D12 is going to be wherever the struggle is going to be. Back in 1991, we were there. In 94, when Yasser Arafat came before the United Nations and said, I come with an olive branch or a freedom fighter's weapon. You choose which one I pick up or lay down. And I remember that day because we were in the streets on 47th Street physically fighting JDL at that time. In fact, that rally, we were the only blacks in the whole rally that went to the UN at that time. But the Palestinians are fighting. And I say to the Palestinians, we down dirty with you. But when shit is happening to us, you got to be down dirty with us. Because people don't struggle for abstract ideas. They struggle to change their material reality, and they have an understanding of who's down with them and who's not down with them. So as Gabral said, tell no lies and claim no easy victories. The Palestinian people are fighting for their lives, and every conscious person in the world should be supporting them. But in the Sahel, they're fighting for their lives. In the Caribbean, they're fighting for their lives. In South America, they're fighting for their lives. They're fighting for their lives around the world because, as Lenin said, the connection between the fight for socialism and the destruction of capitalism is major ally of the national liberation struggles, which is why we must support them and we must support each other. In Brooklyn, we have a slogan around this ethnic cleansing that's going on all over. We say, we ain't going nowhere. 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 Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine. Black power. For black people, because black people need black power. Remember, no justice, no peace. Straight up.
These gizmos cool. So I do want to say that one of the things that obviously has made this meeting so incredible is the fact that we had that technology, but not just the technology. We had the comrades and the friends who knew how to use it, so that we were able to not just get a message from, we saw them give a message. And that, I think, makes a big impression on all of us and made it made this meeting the really international meeting that we wanted it to be. I do want to say, even though our sister Betty Davis isn't here, we do want to make sure that this assembly recognizes the contributions of Ralph Poynter. And I'll say the same thing. For those of you who knew Ralph personally, please do raise your hands. See, this is important that we make sure to do this. So Ralph, along with his partner, Lynn Stewart, and again, Lynn Stewart, another remarkable comrade. They were both a revolutionary couple, along with Betty Davis, and they all fought for community control of schools and against police violence. But more than that, I remember them being at everything. So I just want to say, Ralph Poynter, presente. All right. So we've got a few changes in the program, and there's one more. Unfortunately, our representatives from the League of People's Struggle, the person that was going to come speak is feeling ill, and they had to go. So we do want to thank them for participating. They were here almost the whole day. So again, it's the International League of People's Struggle, ILPS. Thank you. So I'm moving on, and we are going to have a video. William, he's Venezuela-U.S. coordinator of the Alex Saab Support Committee. I hope everybody was out there once demonstrating for Alex Saab's release. And the staff of the Alliance for Global Justice. I know that the tech people went, what? What?
Hello, my name is William Camacaro. I'm a Venezuelan American citizen right now in Bolivia, Cochabamba. I'm just sending this message to all of you to celebrate the huge victory of the freedom of Alex Saab. Alex Saab, a Venezuelan diplomat that was kidnapped by the United States in 2020, is now a free man. Is living with his wife, with daughters, with family in his city. Thanks to the effort of all of you and all the people that unconditionally were supporting him. I feel extremely happy because this is not a victory only for the Venezuelan people. It's also a victory from the movement all over, because people from all over were supporting Alex Saab. It's also a victory against the USA sanctions. We need to remember that there are almost 40 countries living and suffering under sanctions. USA sanctions, European sanctions. This is extremely important. Also, we need to remember that there are huge numbers of political prisoners in the United States. We need to fight back to get free Julian Assange, an extremely important political prisoner in the United States, not only for people in the movement in the United States, but people from the movement all over. We need also to get free some of the black political prisoners. One of them is Mumia Abu-Jamal, that we need to get him free. We need also to fight for the freedom of Leona Partier. So we have a lot of work to do, and we can win. When we work together, when we work united, we can win. And that's the message. We won, and we will be winning. My message is that we need to organize and to continue the fight for the freedom of all the political prisoners in the United States. Thank you very much.
Guess who is coming next? We are going to Tehran, Iran. So Hamid Sherabi, Research Director of House of Latin America, HOLA, in Tehran, Iran. My sincere apologies to tech. I saw you all going, when I was saying, you got the wrong one, like, no, we don't.
Dear friends and comrades, I'm pleased to greet your timely International Assembly on the very noble cause of solidarity with Palestine. At such a crucial moment, the thousands and thousands of the innocent childs, women, elderly people are being killed every single minute, day and night, right in front of our eyes. A very ugly genocide. I'm addressing you from Iran, a land that itself has been a main target of United States imperialist aggressions all over throughout its modern history, and especially since the triumph of the Islamic Revolution of Iran back in 45 years ago. And let me tell you, the aggressions against Iran has got something to do with the uncompromising stand of the Islamic Republic of Iran in regard to support of the Palestinian people. Let's go back to Palestine. What is happening there? At the surface, what you see is just these massacres, heartbreaking massacres. But when you look at it closer, you see another thing. You see the resistance. unprecedented resistance, quite inspiring resistance, which has not only the support of the Iranian people, but the people of the whole region of West Asia, the countries in South, the young people in Europe, and you, the people in the United States. So the relationship of force has been changed and is being changed in our favor, drawing and picturing the perspective for a final victory, for realization of the rights of the Palestinians. And we are talking about the right to live, which is a very, very basic human right. The right to have access to food, to drinkable water, to escape from famine, to have a shelter which couldn't be bombed by the vicious will of the expansionist, racist, Nazi regime of the Israel. So here is the perspective for victory. But in order to realize such perspective, we need to do lots of work. We have to insist on our most immediate demands for a ceasefire, for humanitarian aid to the people of Palestine, and other demands as well, such as bringing the criminals to justice, Netanyahu and his fascist gangs, to the international court, which looks at the crimes at war times. And other demands again as well, namely sanctioning Israel, boycotting the Israeli goods, which, to be objective, frank and honest, that's not what we are observing at the moment, even from the side of some of our friends, some of the countries, powerful countries, that we expect them to do more, to sanction Israel. This is how we are going to triumph. We will and we shall triumph only by joining our forces, by insisting on our legitimate, rightful demands in solidarity with Palestine. Thank you for listening to my voice. I wish you success.
Next is another video. This is from Li Suhin, coordinator of China-U.S. Solidarity Network and the National Immigrant Solidarity Network.
Greeting from Shanghai, China. This is Suhin Li Xiaoshan from China-U.S. Solidarity Network, 中美民间交流协会. Today, I'm in Shanghai, China, to want to express a strong support of Palestinian struggle in the Gaza and the West Bank. Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! 巴勒斯坦民主解放万岁! For the last several decades, China and the overwhelming majority of Chinese people has been supporting the Palestinian struggle. Today, the U.S. imperialists and Western countries are interfering the China's internal sovereignties by claiming the so-called the Xinjiang massacre and genocide myth to want to break our country. The U.S. is saying they care about the Muslim in China, yet the Western country, the U.S. imperialists, are supporting the Zionists on massacre thousands of Palestinians and West Bank and Gaza and occupy their land and continue the military campaign, non-stop bombing 24/7 every day. U.S. saying they care about Muslims around the world, yet they are supporting the Zionists. It's not only a hypocrite, but the flat out lying. There's no such thing as Xinjiang genocide and Xinjiang forced labor camp. That is what the U.S. imperialists want to divert their attention while supporting the Israeli Zionists on occupied Palestine, while they want to break our country, to break the Belt and Road initiatives, to break the prosperity from Asia to Middle East to North Africa. I'm also concerned that small portions of the Palestinian movement are using this message, diverting our attention from the Palestine to Xinjiang. I urge everyone need to see the facts clearly, work together. While we against U.S. imperialism on launching the campaign on Taiwan Strait, the South China Sea, and the Korean Peninsula to target against our country, to build a solidarity together to support the Palestinian struggle and fight against the U.S. imperialism and Zionism. Very soon we're going to launch a Xinjiang to Gaza campaign, an education campaign to linking the struggle of the Palestinian struggle to U.S. imperialism, to want to launching their corporate actions in the Central Asia to the South China Sea to the Taiwan Strait. We need to stop this, and we need to stop the U.S. imperialism. We need to stop the Zionism. Let's work together, solidarity forever. Free, free Palestine. Free, free Palestine.
Our next speaker, another person who I know many of you in this room know because of her longevity in the struggle for Puerto Rico. So please welcome Esperanza Martell. Also known as SB. She is an educator, longtime organizer for Puerto Rican independence and freedom for political prisoners. Again, welcome her to the podium.
Thank you. Many blessings to all you freedom fighters. From Lenin, from Che, from Fidel, for every ancestors of ours that we stand in their shoulders. I, like Brenda, throughout my talk, I want to talk about resistance. And I want to talk about day-to-day resistance. I've been watching these little tic-tacs the children in Palestine are doing. And some other people are doing tic-tacs around Palestinian food. It's amazing that then in the middle of genocide, we use our culture to hold us up and fight back. That is very important because we could all fall into despair. We talk about genocide of the Zionists, aka the United States government, against the Palestinian people for more than 75 years. We could talk about settler colonialism in Puerto Rico and many other countries around the world, but in Puerto Rico in particular, that had 500 years of settler colonialism by Spain, and for over 125 years of settler colonialism by the United States. They're not bombing us in Puerto Rico right now. But in the last few years, we had a population of 600 million people, and today it's down to 300 million people. That's genocide. That's genocide. And it's very important to understand why you go to Palestinian demonstrations and you always see a Puerto Rican flag. Why we, as a people, stand with the Palestinians. Because the United States wants a Puerto Rico without Puerto Ricans. And that's genocide. And we feel it en nuestras entrañas. I mean, certain words I can't say in English. In our guts, I guess that's what that means. You know, we feel it. We understand the struggle for Palestine. And in reading What's to Be Done, Lenin's What's to Be Done, for me, the most important is you cannot wage struggle without politics. You have to understand dialectical historical materialism. So that one goes hand in hand, whether it's the union economic struggle, how do we get the unions in the United States to come out, is by raising the political question from a class, race, gender perspective. And that's resistance to do that work. And that is very hard work. I can't say that I am representing here Uptown for Palestine, because I didn't ask them, okay? But before Uptown for Palestine, there was progressives from Washington inwards. People built on the work of other people, right? And everybody talks about Lenape, Washington Heights, and Inwood, and nobody talks about how they resisted, and they resisted, right? People love Washington Heights and Harlem and Inwood, and we are sitting, these grounds were full of plantations. The Jamal House, Hamilton House, Dykeman House, and there's a lot of burial grounds in this area. And we resisted because there are also underground railroad houses here. So the only reason we're here is because we resisted, right? Omowale talked about the Audubon or the Malcolm X Center, and it's here because we resisted. Imagine a boarded building where activists painted murals to hold this space. Resistance is not futile. We give testimony to that. But we have to be persistent and consistent and link ourselves to other struggles. Yesterday, right here, began on 175th Street in Fort Washington, more than 1,000, mostly young people, march for Palestine. Of course, you did not hear that in the news. And we're connected to the Coalition for Palestine that Richie talked about in the Bronx, right? The vision is that this city will flood the United Nations. I mean, my vision, because I think very big, when the Committee for Decolonialization in June is at the UN, because the struggle begins as we as a people push up. Can I hear that? The struggle begins when we as a people push up. One more time. The struggle begins when we as a people push up. Okay? We're the ones that make freedom happen. If we don't take it on, nobody's going to take it on. The buck stops here, right? And Brenda talked about who are you going to talk to? Who are you going to talk to about this conversation? Each one of you represents 1,000 people, okay? I don't know how many people in the room, but there's been many people. So that out of this meeting, 100,000 people will be communicated to. Give yourselves a hand. And at another time, I will talk about the comparisons between Puerto Rico and Palestine, and how together the struggle continues. And Puerto Rico, as Palestine, will be free. Remember, a fight for Palestine is a fight against U.S. settler colonialism. It's a fight for Puerto Rico. It's a fight against oppression of all the people in the world. So again, be consistent and persistent. Love yourself and love others. All we have is each other. All power to the people.
Our next speaker, as she comes to the podium, Claudia O'Brien Moscow, is reading a message from Margaret Kimberley, Coordinating Committee of Black Alliance for Peace and the Senior Editor of Black Agenda Report. As she comes up, let me remind those who are here in the city or who can come back that on March 21st, there will be a memorial for Ralph Poynter at the Riverside Church.
Thank you, everyone. It's really good to be here. My name is Claudia O'Brien Moscoso. I'm here on behalf of Black Alliance for Peace, and I'm reading this message on behalf of my esteemed comrade and colleague, Margaret Kimberley. That's right. Greetings. I am sending this message on behalf of the Black Alliance for Peace. The Black Alliance for Peace stands in solidarity with the people of Gaza and all Palestinians under occupation in the racist apartheid settler state. We recognize the right of Palestine to exist and the right of Palestinian people to exist and to resist occupation. We call on African, Black people to remember our long tradition of solidarity with Palestine. We condemn the monstrous and cowardly actions of the racist Zionist entity, which is committing mass atrocities against the 2 million people who are locked in the open-air prison of Gaza. Black Alliance for Peace is proud to have worked closely with other organizations in supporting the Republic of South Africa as it invokes the Genocide Convention against the Zionist entity in the International Court of Justice. BAP leadership worked with other organizations in the International Coalition to Stop Genocide, in calling on organizations around the world to express support for South Africa's courageous action. More than 1,500 organizations worldwide have done so. It is fitting that in the early 3 months of the Zionist entity's campaign of terror, that the nation which struggled against apartheid was the first to step forward and to call it to account for its war crimes and its genocides, both of which are clearly defined in the Genocide Convention and the Geneva Conventions, which the genocidaire state is itself a signatory to. Despite the Biden administration's claim that South Africa's case is meritless, we know that its 84-page document clearly spells out acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, which is the genocide definition Israel signed on to. Nations such as Bolivia, Jordan, Malaysia, the Maldives, Namibia, Nicaragua, Turkey, and Venezuela, among others, are in support of South Africa's actions. Speaking of the Biden administration, I want to thank those comrades in Charleston, South Carolina, who stood up in front of Joe Biden himself and demanded an end to the genocide. Biden used a black church, Mother Emanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church, the home church of a man named Denmark Vesey, a man who freed himself from enslavement, but who attempted a rebellion of enslaved people. Biden cynically pretended to hold a memorial service for the victims of a racist killer, but it was no such thing. His failing campaign used a black church with a chosen audience as a backdrop to promote himself. We say no more to the genocidaire president and other politicians using black people to try and wash away their crimes. We are the Denmark Veseys of this era as we seek to free the world from imperialist domination and racism. Thank you, and free Palestine.
So next is another wonderful video with Bahman Azad. He is the organizational secretary of the U.S. Peace Council, former acting director of the Center for Middle Eastern Studies at Rutgers University.
Dear comrades and friends, first, allow me to thank you for inviting me to address this historically important International Assembly of Forces of Peace and Human Liberation. I express my heartfelt solidarity with you and with all the peoples around the world who are fighting to assert their fundamental rights against colonialism and imperialism. The historical battle that started on October 7th with the entry of the Palestinian fighters into the Israeli-occupied territories of Palestine has entered its 4th month. In this period of time, the occupying forces of Israel, with the direct support of the U.S. and European imperialist powers, have killed more than 23,000 defenseless men, women, and children in Gaza, have bombed and razed their homes and hospitals to the ground, and have displaced 1.9 million Palestinians, 85% of the population of Gaza. They have blocked people's access to the most basic public necessities such as water, food, electricity, and fuel, and are now attempting to implement a full-scale genocidal project against the people of Palestine. These crimes against humanity by the Zionist State of Israel and its Western supporters have provoked the anger of the global community, and there is not a single day that we do not see massive protests in cities around the world. But as we have seen, the State of Israel and its US and European imperialist supporters do not pay any attention to this global anger. The reason is all too clear. They too are very angry because for the first time in history, the Palestinian people have left their defensive position against the occupation of their land and have taken an offensive action to reclaim their violated and trampled rights. An action that is not only unforgivable for the Zionists and their imperialist supporters, but is also decisively disruptive of their plans. With this action, the Palestinian people brought the entire region into a qualitatively new stage. they destroyed the illusion of the invincibility of Israel's military power. They took away Israel's sense of internal security at the point of bayonet. And more importantly, their action made the forces of the resistance front stronger and ever more united. The criminal genocidal reaction of Israel and the West against the heroic act of the Palestinian people derives from this historical fact. Now, the colonialist and imperialist powers are utilizing the unrestrained power of their propaganda machine to reduce this historical battle to the level of a military confrontation between Hamas and the Israeli state, while blaming Hamas for the situation. They are trying to reduce the liberation struggle of the Palestinian people to a so-called terroristic act by an extremist group against the Jews, so they can silence any opposing view and voice with the label of anti-Semitism. And in this false image that they have created, there is no mention of the 75-year history of oppression of the Palestinian people, no mention of the violent occupation of their lands, no mention of the crimes committed by colonial settlers against Palestinian women and children, and no mention of the insults to the beliefs and sanctities of the Palestinian people. But the reality is something different. Such actions by the Palestinian people was historically bound to happen sooner or later, because it is not merely a local action against a specific entity. Rather, it is a new blaze of the fire of transformation that has been long burning globally against imperialism and the unipolar order created by it. This is not the first time we have seen such a fire raging, and it will not be the last time either. We have seen the flaring of this fire in Ukraine before, and there is no doubt that we will see more cases of similar fires igniting around the world until the complete establishment of the new order based on the independence and sovereignty of the peoples in a balanced and multipolar order. This fire is the sign of the beginning of the birth of a new world. The age of unilateral domination of imperialism and the unipolar world imposed by it has come to an end, and one by one the people of the world are throwing away the rotten chains of imperialism and are standing up to assert their fundamental rights around the world. The Palestinian people, who have always been at the forefront of the liberation movement of oppressed peoples, have once again shown the way out of the current deadlock with their heroic resistance. The struggle continues until total victory. Thank you.
As our next speaker, John Catalanato, comes up, SB wants to, because apparently sitting next to me, one catches forgetfulness.
Keep it here. Keep it here so I can speak into your mic. I wanted to bring the name of Margarita Mathiowetz, who passed in the fall, freedom fighter, Cuban-born, African-Muslim sister who dedicated her life to making sure that women were not mutilated, and who stood for justice and stood for Palestine. Also, I want to invite those of you who are uptown. Every Monday, we have a vigil in front of the pig, Espaillat, up on 108, and sometimes I feel bad calling him a pig, because pigs are better than him. On 181st Street between Fort Washington and Broadway.
Thank you. So John Catalanato is coming up now, and you may say, who in the world has not yet spoken? How many other revolutionary organizations could there be? And of course, there are many, and they have continued to send us messages. So unfortunately, we weren't able to read anymore, but John is at least going to let you know who else wanted to be part of this incredible program.
Okay. Comrades and friends, as an editor of Workers' World for more than 40 years now, I can say I appreciate the written word. The spoken too, but I appreciate the written word, and thus I want to recognize not only the last-minute messages, but also those from revolutionary writers, some of whom we publish regularly, and but for one reason or another, they have not yet been mentioned, so I want to mention them to you because we have published them on workerspoint.org, and we will publish as much as we can of what the people have taught us here today. And some of these are really something that people who are involved in this struggle should read because these are words that nourish our struggle. So we thank Analyst Maestro from the Communist Nuclei of Spain, who interviewed Laila Ghanem, a Lebanese, she introduced Ghanem as a Lebanese communist who is close to the Palestinian resistance as well as the Lebanese resistance. And she is more aware than people in general are about the development of the axis of resistance and the struggle in that region. As a result, Ghanem's description of October 7 analyzes the unity of action amongst the various tendencies of the anti-imperialist resistance in the various parts of the region around Palestine. We thank Mark van der Putte, a Belgian Leninist who writes for the website Investigation in Belgium and for various French and Spanish language sites. He analyzed the intricate relationship over the last 140 years between world imperialism, especially Britain and the United States, and the Zionist movement. Van der Putte exposed the role the Israeli state plays in the service of the world imperialist ruling class. We thank Manuel Raposo, a Leninist from Portugal, who contributed an analysis of why the imperialist countries today give unconditional support to Israel. He writes, the behaviors of the United States, the European Union, and Europe in general shows beyond doubt that Israel's war against the Palestinians is part of a general war by the imperialist West against the people of the Middle East. And he warned also, like Omowale did before, of what it means for how the imperialists would act even within their own country if their property is threatened by a working class rebellion, and to prepare for it. And I guess he means to hit first. We thank the International Peace Initiative, Stop World War III, which held their international conference in Rome on October 27th and 28th last year. 40 organizations from 24 countries participated. They started off mobilizing against the US-NATO war in Ukraine against Russia, but after October 7th, focused also on the genocide being carried out in Gaza. They now declare in a statement, quote, Palestine needs even stronger support from all who fight for democratic rights, for self-determination against imperialism and colonialism, and for a new international order, end quote. Now, along with those, we do have the last-minute ones. Some I just want to mention. There's the Marxist sociologist from Panama, Olmedo Bolucci. There's the, in Turkey, there's the struggle human, Mucadeli Birlegi, who sent a statement. We thank also Alison Boudin from the Fire This Time organization in Vancouver, Canada. We thank the Manuel Rodriguez Patriotic Front in Chile. We thank the Labor Union of Educational health, and public service workers in Venezuela, and we thank the Communist Party of Swaziland. We will make all the statements of solidarity available for people to read. As I said, I believe in the written word, even though I'm speaking now. Now, I conclude here by giving thanks to Lenin himself. Not that I channeled him or he sent me a personal note. And not that even he wrote what I'm going to quote, but it's his party that carried it out, and it's his international. Again, in the spirit of what Rabab mentioned earlier, but a couple years later, there was, in September of 1920, something called the Congress of the Peoples of the East, held in Baku, Azerbaijan, and organized by the Communist International. And there it's worth quoting from, because it gives you an idea of the stretch that a communist organization was making, that should be made today too, by all good communists. I quote, they called for a holy war to end the division of countries into advanced and backward, dependent and independent, metropolitan and colonial. A holy war for the liberation of all humanity from the yoke of capitalist and imperialist slavery, for the ending of all forms of oppression of one people by another, and of all forms of exploitation. Now, they could carry it out. It had the weight of the Russian Revolution and the support of the workers. Now we have a revolutionary movement that started in the East, and we in Workers' World call upon the workers in the West, or in the North, we might say it, to join that class war against exploitation and for the liberation of humanity. Thank you.
I believe there is, am I correct that there's one more video? Yes. And is that Marwa Osman? Okie doke.
We're locating the next video.
So following this video will be some closing remarks by Larry Holmes. Then we'll be singing the International. And then everybody who hasn't been able to say anything out loud, real loud, we're going to chant for a little bit. Then we're going to clean up. I think so. Are we a go?
We just located the video. It's
We
coming.
just lost the video? Oh.
One moment.
There she is.
There she is.
There she is.
Greetings to you from Beirut, Lebanon, the country that is actively supporting with armed resistance the struggle of our Palestinian brothers and sisters in all of historic Palestine, and especially in Gaza, against the brutal genocidal United States Zionist war against everything breathing inside of the Gaza Strip. I want to thank the International Assembly Against Imperialism in solidarity with the Palestinian resistance for inviting me to take part in today's event to address the urgent question of how to raise the level of solidarity with Palestine in the working class and the workers' movement. My friends, colleagues, and comrades, the answer is truly very easy. Palestine should become our lifestyle. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever your profession, no matter how old you are, Palestine can easily become your lifestyle. There's no topic, theme, or activism that Palestine is not part of. How? Well, the genocide in Palestine has not only taken away precious human life, it destroyed the environment, it crushed the economy, it eliminated education, it created famine and it spread diseases, it destroyed community strength, it created ripple waves of trauma for kids who have not slept for the past 3 months. For kids as young as 5 years old who are suffering from sudden adrenaline rushes that are causing heart failure and horrifically sudden cardiac arrests. It has destroyed and polluted freshwater aquifers and led to saltwater intrusion into aquifers and agriculture because of deliberate immersing of Gaza land with seawater under the pretext of pumping it into tunnels to destroy the resistance. What happened in the past 3 months in Gaza was a deliberate attempt to eliminate life as we know it, because the occupation can do so and has the capability to do so. So how do we voice all these atrocities to the world? By making them an inseparable part of our lifestyle. If you're a medic, treat your patients and tell them how lucky they are to have medical care because Palestine does not have any. If you are a plumber, tell your clients how lucky they are to have fresh running water because Palestine doesn't have any. If you are a teacher, tell your students how lucky they are their school is still up and running to provide them with knowledge and education because Palestinian kids watched F-16 fighters carpet bomb their schools. If you are an undertaker, tell the grieving family of the deceased how lucky they are to be able to find a grave and bury their loved ones because Palestine has bodies of entire families still trapped under the rubble with no proper burial and no family to mourn them. Ladies and gents, make Palestine your lifestyle. It is only fair that we do so because anything less than that is without a shred of doubt unfair and will never be enough. Marwa Osman, Assistant Professor of Media Studies and political show presenter and producer, originally from Khiam village in South Lebanon, but talking to you from the capital Beirut, away from my southern home because Zionist Israel is bombing the surroundings of my house with white phosphorus. Thank you for being a kind audience. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
As you saw in your program, Marwa is a Lebanese journalist, TV show host, university lecturer, and political commentator. And now, for some closing final remarks, I'd like to again present Larry Holmes, First Secretary of Workers' World Party. Thank you, Larry.
I'm okay to leave it up to all of you on whether this modest but yet extraordinary event had merit. The only thing I would add is that stay in touch, because if the government should file charges against us for having this event and some of its participants, we may need your assistance. Yeah. Comrades, we face many contradictions. I want to touch on one briefly. It's a painful contradiction that has to be rectified by the working class. The sooner the better. It's going to be like everything else, up and down struggle. The leadership of the labor movement, the top leadership, has become a pillar of support for U.S. imperialism and colonialism and occupation, a pillar of support for racism and Zionism. They give workers' dues, union money to Israel. They organize workers or try to organize workers to go to these pro-Israel parades. If you say something sympathetic to Palestine and you know you have a job in the unions, they come after you. No doubt, over the last 3 months, since October 7th, there are probably any number of trade union staff, people, maybe even officers, who have either come under attack or who have been fired for something they posted, you know, on Facebook or whatever. Comrade Brenda Stokely, who not so very, very long ago was the president of a pretty big union, District Council 1707. 35,000 workers, 6 locals. Because of her militant, outspoken, I will not shut up defense of Palestine, the reactionaries in her union targeted her, found a way to push her out. And we know so many good comrades that have a similar story, whether it's in New York or someplace else. But I say this to say this. Comrades, something has cracked with Gaza. Something has revealed itself about changes, deep changes, transformational changes inside the working class that affects the organized labor movement. You've got several major unions that have come out for a permanent ceasefire. That may not be a revolutionary demand, but you know, I'll tell you what, the Palestinian resistance welcomes it. You've got locals, you've got, I mean, the AFL-CIO top leadership, who probably goes to Israel, they have had to hire lawyers and, you know, go through all sorts of machinations to do something about all the resolutions, proposals for resolutions that are coming up as high as the AFL-CIO Executive Council level, you know, to demand that labor take a position against genocide. This is unheard of. And we already talked about the millions of workers all over the world, but most extraordinarily in Europe and especially, Aki, you know, who have come out in solidarity with Palestine. We haven't seen that. There's a crack. There's a crack. I don't want to overstate it. It's not the revolution, but it's a big crack. And it shows that something's going on. This ain't the working class, you know, of your parents, you know, or there's something's going on. The workers are becoming radicalized. It's a combination of many things. We don't have time to go into it all. And sometimes you can't tell what's happening until some event, you know, reveals, people's reaction to some event reveals stuff. And, you know, I mean, I went to a demonstration in New York against genocide in Gaza late in December. It was in front of the New York Public Library. It was called by unions. That damn demonstration was called by unions. And, you know, it wasn't the biggest demonstration. There have been hundreds of thousands of people in D.C. and tens and even more than tens of thousands of people in New York. Why not? It's a big city. But this wasn't just the few progressive activists on the staff of this or that union. This was about 500 workers representing about 6 different unions. UAW, the postal workers, you know, UE people, UE had some people there, and there, with a couple of these unions, actually, their national executive boards had passed resolutions calling for a permanent ceasefire. And then a lot of union workers just, they came on their own or were organized. But some of us had never seen that, not for Palestine. Not for Palestine. We just hadn't seen that, And some of the ideas that I was throwing out earlier, and I'm not going to repeat them, about what to do, how we can utilize this development, how we can push it forward in terms of making this year, so-called presidential election year, a year where some steps are taking that pushes the working class further in the direction that some of it's moving, towards radicalization, towards anti-imperialism, towards internationalism, towards support with the people and workers of the global South. This is what Lenin was thinking about 100 years ago. So we'll get back to that. It's a good event that we've had here, but it will be even a better event if there is some follow-up. But that's on us. That's on the organizers, and we will do that. I'll just, sum up by saying this. It's all connected. The war against migrant workers, that's an anti-imperialist issue. Imperialism, global imperialism, forces tens of millions of migrant workers to leave their country, leave people they love, places they would like to stay if they could, but they can't, and forces them to migrate to mostly the centers of world imperialism, like this country. And as you know, there is a vicious, violent, multi-level war against migrant workers. And here's the problem, unless I'm missing something, which is possible, I don't see any reaction to that from the working class, any substantial reaction to that. I don't, either the organized labor or even what you might call the left, and these new young workers who are pumping so much great energy into labor and into the workers' movement. I mean, I may be missing something, but I don't see it. And this is dangerous, comrades. It's not just dangerous because, where's people's humanity? You see people, migrant workers freezing in Chicago, freezing in New York. Everybody's attacking them. Mayors are saying you got to get out. The fascists in the West are putting them on buses, children, with no shoes. I mean, it's, it really is, gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching, and cruel, not to mention racist. But as bad as the human side of this is, the biggest problem is that as long as sections of the working class are not responding to this, then the imperialists are winning, because part of this is designed to divide the working class. I don't care about those people. Let them freeze. Let them have no food. Let their children have no clothes. Let them have no health care. And, and until we deport them, let's set up concentration camps. That's one of the ideas that are floating around, where we'll just put them in concentration camps. And maybe racists can go there and heckle them, and if they get lucky, lynch some of them. This is what's going on right now. And comrades, some of us have got to get together and respond to it. my sister, comrade Brenda Stokely. You know, everybody that you know in your life for a long time, every comrade, they have a role. What Brenda usually does with me is she used to say, Larry, that's a nice idea, but it's a little ambitious. And, you know, you got to get some unity. you got to talk to some people. You just can't be putting out stuff, you know, like it springs from your head. And I got you on that. That's right. But we got to get together, some of us, bigger than this, with more organizations. We've got to challenge each other, because you can't talk about pushing the working class forward, radicalizing the working class, raising class consciousness, raising internationalism, solidarity with workers in the West or the North, with workers in the global South. You can't talk about that unless you're going to do something about it. And if the crisis that we're facing right now is not of the magnitude, is not big enough to force us to do something, I'm not sure we can seriously consider ourselves revolutionaries, socialists, communists, or anything. You know, and then acting like we're on another planet. So, I don't know how you feel about what I said, but it's from the heart, and that's all I got to say. I look forward to working with everybody and more people on a non-sectarian basis. We don't have to agree on everything. As long as we're comfortable with each other, we can find a way to work together in the interest of our class, if what's good for our class is something that we prioritize and not just what's good for our organization. Nothing wrong with that. But sometimes you have to have a choice. You have to say, well, I'm not going to do this because it's not good for my organization, but it's good for the working class. I don't see how you can build a revolutionary organization or a revolutionary anything on that basis. That's fast food nonsense, actually. Anyway, thank you, comrades. Thank you all for coming. Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free. Power to the workers.
All right, so you are sort of ready for the next step. So Ryan is coming up. If you need help on the words of the International, they're on the back of your program. So Ryan, come on up here, because until you start singing, I don't know. Okay.
I'm hooked up.
So Ryan, you have the microphone, yeah?
Okay.
Okay. Ryan's getting mic'd up. Is that right?
Yep.
All right.
Am I on? Do I need to? No, it's already on.
Friends and comrades, we're not quite done. We're not quite done.
Arise, you victims of oppression. Arise, you wretched of the earth. For justice thunders condemnation. A better world's in birth. No more traditions change shall bind us. Arise, you slaves, no more in thrall. The earth shall rise on new foundations. We have been not, we shall be all. 'Tis a final conflict. Let us stand in our place. The international working class shall be the human race. the final conflict, let us stand in our place. The international working class shall be the human race.
Woo! Woo! Woo!
Free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine! Build a workers' world. Workers' world.
U.S. imperialism, hands off Yemen. Hands off Lebanon. Hands off Iraq.